Hello and good day to everyone. My name is Mahajoti, and on behalf of Gurukul, I would like to welcome you to the 30th anniversary Gurukul online meet. There are participants and presenters from every corner of the world. We would like to start the program with the Gurukul song, which was the very last song composed and written by Herbat Ranjan Sarkar. And I will read the English translation of this song. We will establish the Gurukul. We will dye each and every bud with the light of knowledge. No one shall remain distant. We will sound every string of the lyre. We will bind everybody with a thread of love and create a garland of incomparable beauty. No one shall be left behind. None shall be pushed to the bottom. All will exist as kith and kin, with their minds full of sweetness and tenderness for all.
আমরা ঘরে নব গুরুকুল
It is my pleasure to introduce the Kulapati of Ananda Marga Gurukul, Dada Shambhu Shivananda.
Thank you, Mahajyoti. Greetings from Anand Nagar. It has been a sunny day and a very soothing, cool breeze has been blowing here. And on the eve of the 30th anniversary of the founding of Anand Marga Gurukul, I have the privilege to welcome you all for the first time in our mission's history. We have attempted to gather a vast galaxy of new humanist thought leaders and new humanist practitioners in one august assembly. You know, Baba's advent on this earth took place at a very critical juncture in human history. In his words, Mahasambhuti comes to remove the inertia and stagnation in social dynamics and to provide acceleration in its forward movement. He founded Anand Marga Gurukul for the explicit purpose of spreading new humanist knowledge throughout the entire planet. Each one of you has been engaged in this task in your own way for many decades. Today, we are pleased to invite some of you to share your passions and help us chart our way forward. How do we join our forces to deal with the challenges emerging in the COVID-19 era? How do we deal with the collapsing economic system, widespread fears and dance of centralized models versus a clamor for economic democracy? How can our education system create enlightened beings? And how to show the supremacy of meditation over the dogmatic beliefs? And how to replace the nationalist agendas with a universal vision? There is no better time in human history to reflect on these and other related issues and foster collaborative actions. We hope to carry on the conversation, which we are initiating here, to a 3-day global online conference on December 11th, 12th, 13th, 2020, where many of you will get the sufficient scope to share your in-depth knowledge, wisdom, and experience. For now, I send my special greetings from Anand Nagar, where I'm myself discovering a grand scheme of Baba to build a place on the earth to reflect his universal ideology. This assembly has a good mixture of veterans and representatives of younger generation. We need both at this critical hour. There have been many initiatives in Gurukul over the past 3 decades, like PR Sakar Institute, PRSI, led by Dada Gunamuktananda, Anand Marga Association of Yoga Educators, AMAI, now led by Dada Vishwarupananji and Sumati, New Humanist Education Forum and Global Association of New Humanist Educators, being coordinated by Didi Anandarama and Arati Prem from our Global Liaison Office in Ithaca, New York, and the Microvita Institute, led by Dr. Manohar in Berlin and Dr. S.K. Verma in Udaipur, India. There are still many faculties waiting to be developed, like history, agriculture, biotechnology, radiology, languages, etc. We welcome everyone to build all the academic streams of Gurukul and help us grow the New Humanist Global University for spreading the legacy of beloved Baba for the welfare of all living beings and the planet itself. So without further ado, welcome aboard and thank you very much for joining us today despite the odd hours, especially in places like Eastern Russia, Western United States and Australia. But we hope we'll make it up in the December event. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Dada. And next we will have 2 brief keynote speakers. First, join me in welcoming Dr. Sohail Inayatullah, celebrated futurist, author of CLA Method, UNESCO Professor of Future Studies.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm presenting on Gurukul making the transition. This is very much Gurukul in a futures context. Now, one of my questions, having studied Sarkar for over 40 years, is why he was also so positive about his vision for the future. If you look at this image, the eternal glow of the boundless elan vital cosmic consciousness has been illuminating the life lamp of universal humanism since time immemorial. That is why I say the future of the human race is not dark, rather it is strikingly resplendent. So what accounts for this incredible positive image of the future, given all the difficulties that we face? So one is the image of the future leads reality. So it's important to have an image of the future that's ahead, that's inspiring, that gives us direction. This pull of the future helps create the desired future. And more so if you look at Sarkar's work on humanism, Gurukul, it enhances our agency, our ability to create the future we desire. So it's positive and we can create it. This also explains from the 14th century onwards the rise of the West, the world Vaishyan system as we know it today. The image of the future was positive, it was pulling. Science and technology was the vehicle. The social system was about meritocracy. Those who work hard will get ahead. Organizations over the last 100, 200 years have been trying to optimize their strategies. Institutional power has been transparent, not the king, but in fact structures that increase our ability to create a good society. And of course, crucial to the rise of the West has been this notion of agency. You and I can create the future. But at every rise, there's a cost. The cost in the Western terms, the world Vaishyan system, has been the cost to labor, has been the cost to females, has been the cost to non-Europeans, and finally, the cost to nature. So these are the things that have been disowned, suppressed, and of course now they're coming back. Now, of course, the other part of the strength of the rise of the West has been the soft side has been pushed away, but always present. The spiritual nature, thus its long arc. It's not had them extinguished, it's kept them there as assets. In 2020 now, we face dramatic contradictions of this rise. Contradiction number one is capital versus labor, and now the rise of AI. Will this end jobs as we know it? Women challenging patriarchy, asking for gender cooperation. The system does not work for them. The rise of East Asia with a different business model, individual plus collective, challenging hundreds of years of domination by the West. Nature, if you see itself as having agency, fighting back via pandemics and climate change. Nation states in themselves unable to hold this structure as challenges come from above global organizations and below people's organizations. And of course, the endless need for every civilization, empire, every system, it needs more energy. The energy is based on fossil fuels, and there's a contradiction between the energy needs, which are exponential, and our governance structures, which are tribal. Thus, regulating energy becomes a deep contradiction in the world system. What happens here? You can start to imagine a new future like Sarkar, or many people are saying, let's go back to the good old days where identity and reality and nature were the way they traditionally were. Thus, we have a system right now, a situation right now, enter the fascist. In terms of Thanos, if you watch Marvel movies, his argument the universe is limited, but population expands. Let's get rid of people. In the US, we see viral genocide against African Americans. We see that in a number of other countries as well. The rise of fascism, identity, our group is true, your group is not true. Now, what do we do in this situation where there's so many choices? The basis of identity, nature, politics, science, technology is being challenged. The world economic system is being challenged. How do we think? Some people go towards conspiracy, what's called conspirituality. Some people go towards fascism. I'm suggesting we use the anchors of Prout to debate how we think about the future, where we wish to go. What are some of these anchors? Anchor one is we move from inequity to keep the money rolling. More equity. Anchor two, we see the world in terms of race, or in humanism, we're human beings with Gaia. Anchor three, dominator systems to gender cooperative systems. Anchor four, the economy, society is being always about competition. The sprint to cooperation on a journey in nature, connected to community, connected to spirit, learning as we go. Anchor four is our way we're thinking materialistic, only matter counts, or is it well-being, physical, mental, spiritual, enhancing who we are? Is the text that we're critiquing, the decision we're trying to make, is it technology back to the past? Let's use old technologies. We don't want new technologies, or innovation for all new technologies, but access to new technologies. And finally, is it about humans or humans plus nature? These anchors help us think where we wish to go. This creates back to agency. The flame of a lamp lights up countless other lamps. In every system, as it reads its crisis, as the contradictions get great, there's a creative minority that leads. If they succeed, the world becomes transformed. If they don't, there's imitation. It becomes authoritarian or a totalitarian system. There's a great piece by Professor Chenoweth, and she argues you just need 3.5% of the population for systemic change. Science magazine had an article that said in organizations, you just need 25%. So we don't have to convince everyone of this Gurukul, future Gurukul making the agency. One of the best ways to find a new narrative, a new story, the success of New Zealand in terms of COVID-19 management has been rapid science, early, decisive border control, community transmission, and inclusion of minority groups, in this case, the Maori. The other part is the narrative, the deep story you tell. The story the Prime Minister told was, using the sports analogy, a team of 5 million. We're all here together. Everyone's there together. So this becomes Sarkar's challenge. Can we become a global team of 8 billion? I remember many years ago, I was talking with a leading theoretical physicist, Maslan Atman. I said, why are you positive about the future? She says, because evolution favors the efficient. Inequity, lack of partnership, nature destruction, war, they are the inefficient allocation of resources and identity. Efficiency will create the type of society Sarkar envisioned that Gurukul is trying to create. The bottom line moves from being just GDP to a quadruple bottom line. Prosperity, people, planet, and spiritual purpose. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for that inspirational talk. I would like to present Dr. Kathleen Kesson. She is a Professor Emeritus of Education, currently based in Vermont. Dr. Kesson?
Greetings, can you hear me? Greetings from the East Coast of the United States, called Turtle Island by many of its indigenous inhabitants. I'm speaking to you from Vermont, a mountainous land first settled by Abenaki people. Translated means the people of the dawn, and the dawn has just come here to Vermont, so hello to you all. I'm actually very humbled and honored to be asked to open this session, especially following my esteemed colleague, Sohail, who spoke about eras and epochs, and I'm going to take us down to the moment and to the personal. I was initiated into Ananda shortly after astronauts made a moon landing, and we Earthlings got to see the first photographs of our tiny watery planet from space. It was a tremendously moving experience, and for those of us who had read Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, we were encouraged to become warriors for the planet in order to preserve this beautiful globe from further harm. That commitment was strengthened when I discovered the philosophical and practical teachings of Sarkar, ideas which have inspired us all with a transformative vision, a way of understanding grounded in care for the earth, respect and connection with all species, radical social equality, and so much more. And like many of you here today, I've spent really my entire adult life working out the deep meanings and implications of those teachings and considering what small part I might play in helping his vision blossom. 50 years have passed since the moon landing, and almost as many since my initiation into Ananda Marga. I love this beautiful planet even more fiercely, but I'm keenly aware of the damage that we have wrought and the terrible challenge ahead. We know the consensus now that we've entered a new geological era, the Anthropocene, a phase of planetary development in which human impact on the earth may cause or have caused irreversible damage. I think all of us gathered here today are aware that we are witness to the great acceleration in which geothermal, biological, ecological, and atmospheric changes threaten all life. I have long believed, probably all my life, perhaps pessimistically, that the great transformation we all hope to see would not come about without some tremendous disaster that might shake humanity out of its stupor. And here we have it, not one disaster, but them converging at once. The pandemic, coupled with worldwide economic chaos, widespread social unrest, and looming climate disaster, have made us keenly aware of the fragile interdependence of our lives. I've been thinking a lot lately about the notion of liminality, an idea from anthropology. It's often used in rites of passage to describe when an individual is stripped of the social status that they possessed before the ritual. They're inducted into a period of transition and finally given new status and reassimilated into society. Liminality is a kind of dream time, betwixt and between knowing and not knowing, neither here nor there, a limbo of uncertainty that is radically open and full of possibility. It's a threshold of time, place, and consciousness, pregnant with new potentials for challenge, insight, transformation, and growth. I believe we're in a moment of collective, perhaps our very first planetary liminality now. And while I'm not oblivious to the challenges we face, I'm hopeful that this moment is a turning away from the barbarism so deeply rooted in our past. The plunder of the planet, the racism, the religious prejudice, the sexism, oppression, authoritarianism, and tyranny. I hope too that it's a turning away from the barbaric present, the status quo, a recognition that despite the desire of so many people to get back to things were, the way things were was not working for most of the people on the planet. The present moment is a precarious one in which the barbarisms of the past disguise themselves in new forms. Poverty, despair, and hunger abound in the facing of increasing economic exploitation and rising wealth inequality. And widespread ignorance fosters conspiracy theories, more dogma, and false ideas at the very highest levels of power. The current crises have brought into sharp relief the injustice and unsustainability of social economic systems that value profits over human needs and the well-being of the planet. And it's possible, just possible, that this moment is a signal of the Great Awakening, a moment that pushes us into creative new ways of thinking about what it means to be human and how we should live our lives. What if the present moment really is a space of liminality, a moment between what has been and what will be, a space between what was and what's next, a space of transition, a season of waiting, during which we collectively question where we have been and where we are going, a space in which we reconceptualize the entire edifice, the mental and material structures that have brought us to the current crossroads in our evolution, a space in which neo-humanism and Prout might finally assume their rightful place among the great ideas that guided humanity from one era to another in the past. I've spent my adult life as an educator and a philosopher of education. I do believe that educational philosophy is, grounded in the ideas of neo-humanism is the way forward, a way of bringing up the next generation so that we might, as Sarkar propositioned, elevate humanism to universalism, the cult of love for all created beings of this universe. Such an educational philosophy requires us to rethink everything we think we know about education, what it means to be human, the nature of knowing, what is worth teaching, what we value, and how we need to live, and the very purpose of education. This is my work now, a rethinking of the fundamentals of education and activism, bring more fully into the world. I look forward to hearing about the work the rest of you are doing to help usher in this great transition. And there's a wonderful organization called the Great Transition Initiative, which I encourage you to look at. It's very similar to the way we're thinking about things. It's really the death of an old era and the birth of the new. And I'm confident that our individual actions, mindfully taken, can have important collective impacts. So I hope we can proceed together into this new world as consciously and compassionately as we can. And I leave you with a quote that inspires me, one of Baba's last discourses. You should prepare yourself physically, intellectually, morally, intuitionally, and spiritually to fill up the vacancy of the dogma-centered theories of religion, the matter-centered theory of communism, and the self-centered theory of capitalism. Time will not wait for us. Time will not wait for our convenience, our feasibility. This moment is the most opportune moment. There is no need to look at the calendar. Do not wait for tomorrow. Namaskar.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Dr. Kesson. Thank you, everyone, for those wonderful keynote talks of inspiration. So, Neo-Humanist Voices is the portion of this program which will include succinct comments from Gurukul scholars and neo-humanist practitioners from around the world. First, I'd like to mention that if you have any questions, you may put them into the chat room at the chat at the bottom of the screen, and they will be collected and answered after this event, and everyone will receive a copy of those questions and answers from this meet. As in all things Zoom, timekeeping is essential, and so everyone has a specified period of time in which to speak, and it is my illustrious job to let you know when a certain number of minutes have elapsed. So I have signs, and I may pop up from time to time, just to let you know where you are in the program. Just a friendly reminder. So this does not mean that you have 30 minutes. It means that you have 30 seconds. And then the last one is no more time. And that is when a moderator may pop in and possibly interrupt to introduce the next speaker. So, when many speakers are introduced, we will have just a short period of time. So in order to do them justice, we have extended their profiles on what is called the profile page document that hopefully everybody has received already. So on this profile page, there will be more information on each speaker. Perhaps you would like to get in touch with one of the speakers from today's program. So hopefully you have already received that. And if not, you can contact Gurukul. So we will, without much more ado, get started with these sessions. And so session 1 is Neo-Humanism, Science, and Microvita. And this moderator is Dr. Sid Jordan, who is also known as Acharya Vishwamitra. He is the founder of Intentional Community in Marshall, North Carolina, and is the president of Ananda Marga Gurukul. Dr. Jordan.
He's muted, I think.
Dr. Jordan, you're muted.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning.
and we're going to move along with this first session on neo-humanism, science, and microvita. We'll begin by introducing Dr. Marcus Bussey, who is the head of Department of Sustainability Research Center at the University of Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. Dr. Bussey, it's a pleasure to have you with us here this morning.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. So it's over to me, Vishwamitra? Yep.
Yes.
Neo-humanism, a call to action. Really important to me that we understand it. There's the verbal nature of neo-humanism. It's a pragmatic philosophy. It's concerned with the work of becoming whole. It argues that we as conscious beings only deepen and expand our consciousness through engaging with the world. Hence, it's a catch cry of liberation of self and service to humanity. So in short, we cannot achieve spiritual goal of liberation without a deep commitment to the world that we inhabit. So this awareness is relational, and it provides a tool for assessing the processes at work in the world by judging the effects of our actions, their motivating beliefs, and the stories that underpin these on the entire planetary system. Action takes place in the world on a day-to-day basis and is managed by those systems that we all recognise, but we also know that they are necessary for the function of civil society. But we can see that they're failing us on a daily basis, and they'll continue to do so until we really re-engage with the worldviews that sustain these. So neo-humanism offers a deep critique of these worldviews. It works with a socio-spiritual theory of power to develop an alternative and practical methods to respond to the global crises that we face today. It asks critically spiritual questions like, what is the quality of the relationships generated by the dominant worldviews today? It goes on to then ask, well, how do we generate new or revive earlier, more inclusive worldviews that will ensure richer futures, more inclusive futures for all planetary stakeholders? These are important questions. Furthermore, recognising that, as Sarkar says, life's an ideological, or I prefer a narrative flow, we now need new stories and new metaphors on which to anchor, that's Kathleen's term, it's Sahel's term, our work in the world at all levels of activity. So importantly, we also need spiritual practices to move us towards a deeper, loving appreciation of our relatedness to all things. In this way, neo-humanism acknowledges that personal development, the inner work of meditation and supportive practices, is linked to the ecological, the social, the cultural evolution of our planetary system. This is ongoing work. There's no endpoint, but there is a goal that calls us forward, and that is the sense that we're moving towards spiritual, loving unity with an expanded consciousness. The sense of interbeing and becoming whole drives us, calls us forward, ever forward. That's part of the optimism that Sarkar captures in his words. To achieve this, we need to address those sentiments that keep us apart under the illusion that we're separate beings competing for limited resources. This sense is, from a spiritual perspective, an illusion. Of course, the planet has limits, yet these limits are accentuated when accepting current worldviews that have no regard for our relational embeddedness in this world. When we embrace the possibilities of a neo-humanist paradigm shift, alternatives to the dog-eat-dog world will emerge. So today, I'd argue that we're at a neo-humanist moment in time, a special moment that seems to be extended, but it's still deeply demanding of our attention. It requires us to recalibrate being, acting, and dreaming. This point's driven home by the struggles that we're facing with COVID-19, the environmental, social, economic, political, knowledge crises, and of course, behind that, or maybe it's above it, there's the existential crises that all such phenomena spawn. So all told, these crises reflect the deep relational, that's the singular and global crisis, that sits at the heart of our human story. Namely that we paid a very high price as a species when we moved into the agricultural and then the industrial world. The cost has been increasing distance from the relational basis of being. To embrace the new form of new humanity is to be neo-humanist. To accept that we are because of others, the human, the non-human, and even the inanimate. that we exist only in relationship, and that such relatedness draws on the wells of deep capacity to love, or what Sarkar called loving stamina. And finally, that we find meaning only through relationship. So Sarkar established Ananda Marga Gurukul in 1990 in order to accelerate this neo-humanist project. Neo-humanism was developed to give form to the recognition that we need a new narrative to provide the inspiration and the tools to transform ourselves and our futures. Thank you very much.
Namaskar. Right on time. Thank you, Dr. Bussey.
Right on time.
We'll move along now with Dr. Michael Towsey, author and director of River School, Maleny, Australia, a senior fellow at Charles Sturt University and Queensland University of Technology in Australia. Dr. Towsey.
Good evening from Tasmania, Australia. I want to talk about the relationship between neo-humanism and science. I'm motivated by a recent article from Sahel about the increasing role of conspiracy theories in the pollution of public discourse. There's much that could be said about conspiracy theories, but suffice to say that these theories range from the vaguely plausible to the completely bonkers. The main message of my talk, however, is that there is a close relationship between neo-humanism and science, and that all social policy must rest on the twin foundations of neo-humanist values and science. The connection with conspiracy theories is that in order to fight them, we need the values of neo-humanism as much as we need the rationality of science. And closer to home, in my experience, some of the parents who send their children to the River School in Australia, that's the neo-humanist school that Marcus and I are associated with, they're quite susceptible to conspiracy theories and they can spread their confusion around the school. So I would add that not just social policy in general, but neo-humanist pedagogy in particular needs to rest on the twin foundations of neo-humanism and science. Now, to justify this statement, I believe we must turn to neo-ethics. It's my feeling that we do not talk much about the two principles of neo-ethics, mostly because Sarkar expressed them in quite difficult language that's not part of everyday discourse. But I've recently come to understand that they are hugely important. In simple language, the first principle of neo-ethics concerns the spiritual goal of life, and the second concerns the necessary conditions to attain that goal. What Sarkar has done is to raise the yogic concept of subjective approach through objective adjustment to a supreme ethic. It has the same overarching status in neo-humanism as the Christian ethic, do unto thy neighbor, etc., does in Christianity, and the Kantian ethic, do that which done, if done by all others, etc., has in his philosophy. A metaphor is helpful here. Suppose I want to sail from Australia across the Pacific Ocean single-handed. My goal is to sail under the Golden Gate Bridge into San Francisco Bay. On the way, I'm obliged to monitor winds and currents and make continual adjustments to sails and rudder. My goal is singular, but to achieve it, I must draw upon thousands of years of maritime science. The science itself does not give me a goal or a direction, but once the goal is chosen, science helps me to sail efficiently, that's a word we've heard already tonight, in my desired direction. In framing social policy, we must have a clear idea about the direction and goal. Science cannot provide this. Neo-humanist philosophy and practice, they give us a goal, and neo-humanist values provide signposts on the way. But once the direction is clear, science provides crucial assistance. It is true that science has its difficulties. It's prone to cultural, gender, and political bias. But just as we do not reject values because they can be difficult to live by, nor should we reject the rationality of science because it's difficult to get around bias. The twin pillars of neo-humanist values and science both require struggle. Just to be clear, I'm adopting here a broad definition of science. It is the process by which we give rational consideration to multiple sources of evidence. To fight conspiracy theories, scientific rationality will not be enough. We need to expose their values in the light of neo-humanism. Typically, conspiracy theories exploit fear and destroy trust. We need to ask questions such as, does this conspiracy theory promote the humanist values of justice, fairness, equity, dignity, courtesy, and respect? Only in this way can we retain crystal clarity in an increasingly confusing and murky world. Thanks very much.
Vishwamitra, you're muted.
Muted.
Thank you, Dr. Towson. We're now moving along with a presentation from Dr. Hans Joachim Rudolph. He's an internist and specializes in rheumatology. He's been a fellow of Society for Microbiota Research and Integrated Medicine since 2012. Welcome, Dr. Rudolph.
Namaskar. I'm talking from Berlin, and my topic is microbiota and consciousness. From the very beginning, when I started in this field, my most important question was, what is consciousness and how does it relate to the physical world? But the so-called classical world is described by two theories, which means by the Newtonian mechanics, which describes matter as made of particles with definite position and velocity, and the other one by classical electrodynamics, which describes light as to be constituted by vibrating electromagnetic fields. Both were used to formulate what is called physicalism, and the consciousness cannot be accommodated in this approach at all. This is important to note, that the classical view does not accommodate consciousness. So all of us experience consciousness in every minute of our conscious or subconscious life, but it is not accommodated in our worldview. It is somehow beyond that one, and we can't properly integrate it. However, at the beginning of the 20th century, some people started exploring new avenues. A little later, particle wave duality was discovered, which needed a completely new framework. And its development started in the 1920s and was dubbed quantum mechanics. Then in 1932, John von Neumann established the form in which it is taught up to now. It is called orthodox quantum theory and marks a radical departure from the Newtonian understanding of the world. As the latter doesn't leave any place for consciousness, many hoped that quantum theory could be naturally taken as the right place to accommodate consciousness in a scientific framework. Different approaches were put forward, particularly by Werner Heisenberg, who introduced the distinction of quantum potentiality and quantum actuality. Then also by Eugen Wigner, who opined that the wave function collapse, which means the switch from potentiality to actuality, is finally triggered by a conscious observer. Also by Henry Stubb, who pointed out that the wave function collapse can be used to argue that while Newtonian mechanics doesn't leave any room for consciousness, quantum mechanics requires it. And by Wolfgang Pauli and Carl Jung, who maintained that matter and mind stand in complementary relation to each other, just like particles and waves. They also emphasize that the conscious and the unconscious are connected by a process of emergence analogous to quantum measurements. Finally, by Frank Wilczek, who proved that space is not an empty and passive container. Rather, it is a dynamic grid, and its spontaneous activity creates and destroys particles. In this respect, I refer to a talk which Frank Wilczek gave in 1917 under the headline Materiality of Vacuum. There, he points out that quantum chromodynamics describes and discovers a space-filling condensate of quark-antiquark pairs. I have a short video which shows how this can be visualized. In 2003, Dada Vimalananda and myself had an idea how on the subatomic level microvita can become the fundament of all conscious and pre-conscious experiences. This idea was presented on the microvita.org website in March 2003. It signifies that whenever we find quark-antiquark pairs bound to each other by an exchange of gluons, we can call this unit a microvitum. Because these pairs annihilate each other at any time, and at the time of re-emanation, they carry some bits of information from the vastness of vacuum to the limited existence of our fermiotic world. Hence, these pairs embody a fundamental parallelism of matter and mind, which is normally found in living beings only. Now, the question is how this relates to our brains, and particularly to the synchronization of our neuronal networks. As I have only a few minutes time here, I am unable to answer this question in detail, but I can refer to the two books which were released from our institute, Microvita Research Institute, namely in 2012, From Imaginary Oxymora to Real Polarities and Return, and in 2017, Microvita Exploring a New Science of Reality. In the end, we came up with a 4-chamber model, which was presented by Baba in his last chapter, Microvita and Cosmology. There, he makes a bifurcation of subjective and objective states, and that bifurcation is complemented and added by a second bifurcation between complemented and reduced states. So in the end, we get 4 chambers. 4 chambers means 1 chamber of the witnessing mind, 1 chamber of the acting mind, then the objective states with the objectivated mind and the objective world. And the operators which allow a transition between these chambers are defined as microvita in our approach. We can give more explanations in the question and answer session, but here I just can refer to 2 books which I find very helpful in this respect. The first book is Much Ado About Nothing by Edward Grant, and the second one is Panpsychism in the West by David Scribina.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph.
These books are quite voluminous, and for those who want to have an introductory, they can see an article, What is Matter Conscious? And the second one, a scientific paper, Quantum Mechanics and Consciousness, by
have to move
Vali
on.
Alori.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. We have to move on now. Thank you very much for this elucidation of quantum theory and microvita introducing us to consciousness. We have to move
Thank
on
you.
now to Dr. Vartika Jain, Assistant Professor in Botany at the Government Mira Girls College, Udaipur, and she is Secretary of the Society for Microvita Research and Integrative Medicine. Dr. Vartika Jain, please come forward with your presentation.
And welcome everyone to this brief video about various activities of Society for Microvita Research and Integrated Medicine from Udaipur, Rajasthan, India. Society was established to study the science of microvita and propagate microvitology at various levels, and also to start research work in the field of integrated medicine. President of Society Dr. S.K. Verma, myself Dr. Vartika Jain, working as Secretary of the Society. And since its conception in 2008, Society has carried out various activities. So let's have a look to this. The inception of Society itself is a historical event because it is the first registered academic society in India which is working upon the microvita research and integrated medicine since 2008, and 116 live members have been enrolled. Society is regularly publishing an official bulletin on microvita research and integrated medicine since 2009, and the 12th volume has released in the 2020. We have first time coined the new terminologies in the field of microvita, that is microvitology, microvitopathy, microvitopsychopathy and microvitocytology, published in Bombrim. We have first time designated 31st December as Microvita Day because it was the day on which the first time Shipiya Sarkar has given the concept of microvita, and since 2009 we are regularly celebrating this day. We have first time organized 2 international seminars on microvita research in India and Udaipur in 2012 and in 2016. Scientific validation of some of the plants of yogic chikitsa mentioned for heart disease, hypertension and diabetes by Shri P.R. Sarkar has also been carried out on these 5 plant species. And all these small cardamom, cinnamon, bhumikishman, greater cardamom and samal have shown beneficial effects in the scientific validation studies as proposed by Shri P.R. Sarkar in his book Yogic Chikitsa. And we have also published the first book on the samal plant in 2012, which was published by Springer. Society is also propagating Shri P.R. Sarkar's contribution in the field of microvita, medicine and neo-humanism in various national and international conferences, seminars, symposia, webinars, etc. Society is also carrying out neo-humanistic activities. For example, we have first time enumerated 83 plant species in 5018 Prabha Sangeeta, the composition by Shri P.R. Sarkar. We have also enumerated 57 faunal species in the 755 songs of Prabha Sangeeta. Besides scientific validation of the roots of somel tree as described by Shri P.R. Sarkar, we have first time started Semel Conservation Mission here in Udaipur in India, looking to the decreasing population of this tree in Udaipur city. For this purpose, we have created awareness through print media and through talks and group discussions. We have also raised new semel saplings by collecting the seeds from forest, and these saplings have been planted in and around Udaipur city with the help of various organizations. And with this, we have also given a novel concept of iron pole holika dahan instead of semel tree. Since 2011, this eco-friendly iron pole holika dahan is being carried out and implemented in various societies in Udaipur and in nearby areas. We have also started conservation of Adansonia digitata tree, popularly known as baobab tree, and collected its seeds, raised the saplings and planted them at various places. For the first time, we have conducted solar cooker workshops to demonstrate the people about how to use the solar cooker to prepare their food, and first time we have conducted solar cooker recipe contest in Udaipur city. In 2015, we conducted a 7 days biopsychology based yogasan seminar. In 2018, on 7th October, we conducted a dialogue on psychology, microvitology and humanistic ideology. And in future, we are planning to have more seminars on microvita and integration of research work on microvita, and also start collaborative research work in integrated medicine, and also to look towards some local ecological problems and for their solutions. So with this, I request all of you to join the society for this noble cause. Thank you very much.
Well, let me go ahead then and offer a brief commentary on these presentations that we've heard. Beginning with Dr. Bussey, he's presented neo-humanism as a pragmatic philosophy that expands consciousness by engaging with the surrounding world. So I think the key point that Dr. Bussey is making is that this is a neo-humanist moment, as had reflected in Kathleen Kesson and Sahil's those presentations. This is a moment of crisis, multiple crises in the world, and this is an opportunity for the paradigm of neo-humanism, a new narrative to be introduced to the world that offers a solution both relational, as Dr. Bussey points out, and one that builds society, overcoming racial divide and many divides that exist in a polarized world. So all of the speakers thus far have reflected this need for a
Unless she comes back.
subjective approach to an objective adjustment. Dr. Bussey's challenging conspiracy theories and the distortion of facts in the world by saying that we need to support the development of social policy on the twin foundations of neo-humanist values and rationality of science, a subjective approach to an objective adjustment espoused by P.R. Sarkar. He points out, however, that rationality of science cannot provide the needed direction and goal, that what is required is neo-humanist values to overthrow conspiracy theories and transform society. Dr. Rudolph has given us a review of classical physics as and the dawning of quantum physics, which made a place in science for the study of the role of consciousness. The contributions by P.R. Sarkar of the four-chamber model provide a platform for the study of the role of microvita in the transition among subjective and objective states of imagination and reality. So we see reflected in the keynote speakers and in these people that have just presented, Dr. Bussey and Dr. Rudolph, the integration of science and neo-humanism as the needed formula for transforming the world, both individually and collectively. So we are now going to move on with the next session. I'll turn this back over to Mahajoti.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. And hopefully Dr. Jane will be able to get in once again. And so we'll anxiously wait for that moment. I wanted to remind everybody that if you have any questions for any of the speakers, you can put them into chat, and then they will be collected and shared with all of our presenters at some time after this event. And then everybody will get copies of that. So session 2 is entitled Socioeconomics and Global Perspectives, and Dada Shambhu-Shivananda will introduce the speakers for this session.
Thank you very much, Mahajoti. And we will begin with Dr. Ravi Batra, I think, I hope he is connected. Dr. Ravi Batra is well known to all of us and to the entire world for bringing the proud agenda on the global collective psyche. So I hand it over to Ravi Batra.
We all know very well that Shri P.R. Sarkar made a lot of contributions to humanity. and we can only touch one at a time on his theories. And I'm known as an economist, but I will talk about mostly about the law of social cycle and how it is related to what's happening right now. We are now at the very end of the age of acquisitors. In the age of acquisitors, there is a tremendous rise in wealth concentration and exploitation of workers and great rise in poverty, which in the end results in a social revolution. So now the question is, how do we know that this is the end of the age of acquisitors? How do we know that the end going to occur sometimes during this decade? I have observed a curious pattern of history after Sri Sarkar was born. He was born, I think, in 1921. And after he was born, a curious pattern of history has been occurring in society, starting with 1929. If you recall, 1929 was the year of the Great Depression. And ever since then, I have observed that every year of the last year of every decade has had eventful events which then foretell the future of the next decade. Let's see, in 1929, the Great Depression started. So according to this theory, that the last year tells us about what's going to happen in the next decade, we found that this Great Depression of 1929 determined almost every decade, every event of the 1930s. Let's go to 1939. What happened in 1939? The Second World War started in that year. That's another very great event. And that determined the events of the 1940s. Hitler attacked, Hitler attacked first, and then the whole world had to fight with him. Hitler, Italy, and Russia initially, the whole world had to fight with them. India's Subhash Chandra Bose also started a great revolution in the military, and then we find India got independence in 1947. And once India got independence, so many other states also became independent. So the point is that event of 1939, the start of the Second War, essentially determined events of the 1940s. Now let's see what happened in 1949. 1949 is another last year of a decade. In 1949, Chinese Revolution occurred. Chinese Revolution, the great communist revolution of China occurred in 1949. At that time, China was in the age of acquisitors, and the age of acquisitors ended in a social revolution. Okay, so now, Chinese Revolution determined the events of the 1950s. The whole decade is almost a Cold War decade between communism on one side and China and capitalism on the other side. So that was also last year of the decade. Then let's come to 1949, another last year. In 1949 occurred the Cuban Revolution. Now, Cuban Revolution started, enhanced the Cold War. Russia and America almost came to started a World War III, but because of the Cuban Revolution. Then let's come to 1969. 1969 was the start of the Great Inflation. What happened after that? 1970s. The whole decade is inflationary. All right, but very little time is given, I guess. 1979, the revolution in Iran determined the events of the 1980s. So now this coronavirus, when did it start? The coronavirus started in 2019, end of the last year. And this will end the age of acquisitors in the 1920s. That's my prediction. Just like the age of feudalism, that was the previous age of acquisitors in the West, that was also ended by another virus. At that time, the plague virus. Now it's the coronavirus. So if there was more time, I would go on and on, but this is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I must remind everybody that this was intended only as a teaser. And in December, we are planning to have more time when we'll be able to hear him at much greater length, December 11 to 13. So now I'll request Dr. Edward McKenna, please, I think he's there, if he can come on. Thank you. Aditya?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Well, hello to everyone. It's nice to meet all of you, even if it's only through cyberspace. And it's also nice to see the faces of some people who I have not seen in many decades. My remarks are going to be mainly with respect to the United States, which is where I live and what I know best, although from what I read, these remarks probably have a much more general applicability in many places in the world. And what I want to say is that from the period from the end of World War II until about 1980, you can describe the United States as a place where there was something that at least resembled democracy as taking place. It was never perfect, but you did see the civil rights movement, the feminist movement. We did see a movement to create a meaningful minimum wage. We did see progressive taxes. We did see the growth of countervailing institutions that in some sense reined in the power of those who control resources under capitalism, the oligarchy. And there indeed was some success in doing this. Perhaps one way of measuring this success is the fact that the share of wages, okay, what goes to the average working person, in fact, did increase, and the share of profits, in fact, fell. But as you might expect, those who control capital didn't take this lying down, and they, in fact, fought back. And they fought back through the implementation of a philosophy that's come to be known as neoliberalism, which basically is the idea that markets and individualism can be relied upon to solve all problems in the world. And it's remarkable to the extent to which this philosophy has caught on throughout many places in the world. And what was the result of this? Well, the oligarchy did in fact regain and indeed expand their power. And what we've seen is the rise of financialization, the rise of monopolization. And from this has followed the enormous increase in inequality and the incredible inability to deal with problems like climate change that are staring us in the face. Okay, a market philosophy is never going to be able to deal with these kinds of problems. Okay, but what we did see then was the rise of an oligarchy that had not only economic power, but also political power, so that the United States no longer could be described as even remotely resembling a democracy. It was much more a plutocracy, a rule by the rich. And this was all before the rise of Trump, which is what I want to emphasize. This is something that in some sense set the groundwork for the rise of Trump and the rise of authoritarianism in general. And this is another point that I want to stress. I think right now, what we in fact are facing, okay, what we might say is the strongest growing force, at least within the United States, is the rise of authoritarianism. And because of this, what has happened is a deep undermining of the belief on the part of the general public that government can in fact, or the state can in fact work for them. There is a deep, deep distrust in the ability of the state to work for the average person. And this, of course, only increases the room within which authoritarianism can in fact grow and spread, which is exactly what we see taking place. And I think the point that I would want to emphasize is that this is happening right now. People don't seem to realize it's not a question of saying, oh, if we don't do something now, this is going to arise in the future. It's happening right now. The extent to which people no longer trust information, okay? There are people in the United States who claim that the COVID crisis is a fake. It's not even happening. There are people in the United States who are most affected by these kinds of things, who are placing their faith in people who have nothing but their own interest at heart. And after all, this has always been true about authoritarian views. They claim to rule in the interest of the nation, but what they really do is to rule in the interest of the power of the individual who claims to represent the nation. So my message, really, my main work at this point in time, is trying to get people to understand that this is happening right now. We all have to stand together right now, regardless of the source from which people may have gained an understanding of social consciousness, that we have to worry about all individuals, that we're all in this together to some extent. We must, in fact, act together now. But we also have to understand that this is just the first step. Even if we stop what's happening now, it just brings us to where we were before Trump. And that means we need to come to a proper understanding of the role of the state and how it relates to the individual, how all individuals are important, how all individuals must be able to flourish, and how all individuals must believe that they can trust in the kind of societal institutions, including government, that we have. And I have the no more time sign, so I will stop right here.
Thank you very, very much. As you all know, Dr. Edward McKenna is a professor of economics and long-time associate of ours. And now I move on to Khun Krisida Kampanat Sanyakon, if he is connected. Is he connected? Khun Krisida Kampanat Sanyakon, he is the chairman of Selenium and Thai Gypsum based in Bangkok.
Yes,
I don't
he
know
is. He is.
He's connected? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
He might be muted. He is muted.
Can we unmute him?
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Hello?
Krista. Yes, yes,
Can you
please
hear
go
me
ahead,
now?
Krista. Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dada, and respectable brothers and sisters. It's an honor to be invited to participate in this forum today. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Krisida Kampanat Sanyakon, and I'm a businessman and a Thai industrialist. We specialize in mining, manufacturing, engineering, and construction. I was very much privileged to be able to meet Baba many years ago when I was still in university. And with direct conversation with him for about a week, I have a privilege to take him for a walk every day for 1 hour. So I get to talk to him a lot. Before that, I was also a foreign correspondent for Jungfrong Press. So at that time, my profession was a deputy interview. So with the conversation of Baba, I was very much inspired with his teaching. And I found that what I need to work on is to develop a solution, not a philosophical solution, but a practical solution that is an answer to the most critical problem today. In my view, humanity now is at a big crossroad. We are either going to utopia or oblivion. Why utopia? Because we are all very much best equipped with all the knowledge to the process. But oblivion, if we cannot progress fast enough, I think the negative force is built up, especially in this part of the world, South China Sea, is very serious. The way they are mobilizing everything, it look like real war is not so far away at all, sitting at my perspective. My work has been, I see the critical solution is to develop a renewable energy system that is cheaper than grid parity, than normal thermal combustion engine. Why is this important? Because by having renewable energy as a base load, I mean, use renewable energy 24 hours, 365 days a year, will free humanity. I think the rich control everybody, not only through debt, to market, but also to energy. And the enable technology to do that is energy storage. We have to work on the energy storage solution that is that can provide base load capability, also have a cost below grid parity. And this is what I've been working on for the last 30 years. Now we're working with the main energy institution in Thailand, Petroleum Authority of Thailand, and EGAT, Electrical Generating Authority of Thailand. They are the two most prominent institutions in Thailand. So we've been working on this subject for the last 30 years. We develop our own technology and solution, our own patents, and come up with a viable solution that can be affordable by the mass. And I think through the equation of energy, wealth comes from productivity, and productivity comes from energy. So this is the way of directly solve the problem of poverty and food insecurity. Thank you very much. I hope it's not too long.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kisada, for very succinctly pointing out the real solutions for the future. And I should mention to everybody that the theme which we have chosen for the December Spiritual Conference is Solutions for Building a New World. So I hope that many of his thoughts and his ideas will be discussed even at that time. So we are looking forward again to connect at that time. Okay, we move on. And the next speaker is Craig Chandrasekhar. He will, I hope he's connected also.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, can you please share your thoughts on the World Constitution or...
Yes, thank you very much, Dadaji, and greetings to everyone. Yes, I'm going to give a little bit of an update on in effect, a project dealing with a world constitution according to Baba's principles. It actually resonated a little bit in both of the opening remarks by Kathleen and by Sohail. Kathleen, in that she cited one of Baba's quotations that neo-humanism elevates humanism to universalism, the cult of love for all created beings in this universe. A couple of decades before Baba gave that quote, he talked about how to materialize universalism in this world, we would need a world government. And then in 1986, he further said that in order for there to be a world government, we would need a world constitution. In 1990, he inspired me to work on drafting a world constitution. And in the many years that have followed, I've been doing research of his materials. I've collected about 1,500 different quotations from 75 different discourses, mostly from books of Prout in a Nutshell, The Liberation of Intellect, Neo-Humanism, Proudest Economics, Neo-Humanism in a Nutshell books, and then have indexed these 1,500 quotes according to different subject areas that would be part of a world constitution. During that same time, I was able to review the literature on world constitutions, which is actually quite extensive. It's something that grew a great deal after World War II and the horrors that people experienced and a desire to find peace. The literature expanded quite a bit, and there are a number of sample world constitutions in existence. But this one is meant to be one based on Baba's principles. And so reviewing the other literature sets a context, doing a little bit of writing in the area. I've had a chance to write a couple of book chapters on the subject. And also, I was able to take from the constitutional literature some samples by a professor whose name is Albert Blaustein on how to frame modern constitutions. In the case of the World Constitution according to Baba's principles, we'll be focusing on two things. One, the text of the Constitution itself, which is a fairly succinct document, and then a commentary that goes along with it. And the commentary explains the thinking behind each of the aspects or each of the components of the Constitution, and references Baba's materials that support that particular part of the Constitution being in there and being written as it is. The textual portion of it will focus on things such as the responsibilities and obligations of government to people, the rights of people and other living beings, and to be free from certain kind of coercive aspects of government, and to be able to be assured of certain rights by government. Another segment of it will deal with the actual structure of government, legislative, judicial, executive, and so forth. There'll be a treatment of how a world government would be related to various subsidiary governments on a state or local basis, and finally an amendment process. The commentary section of the Constitution, which I think is actually in some senses the more substantive piece, will reference Baba's materials, the different quotations that have been studied, give footnotes to those that people can go and study the direct language that Baba gave with respect to different issues. There'll also be a bibliography and an addenda introducing Baba and giving an overview of world constitutional literature. This should be done, the writing should be done in next year, 2021. It should be available in print and online in 2022. I've been working with some Protestant economists to get feedback on the economic sections of the Constitution. I would love to get feedback from other people with respect to environmental, social justice, indigenous peoples' rights, the rights of plants and animals, and other things that would go into or should go into a constitution And I'd appreciate it if you could reach out to me at craiggrundy@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. This is so inspiring that for decades you have been working on this. So without further delay, I'll move on to Hiranmaya. Is he on? Dr. Howard Neiman. He has some very important things or remarks also. So
yes.
Yeah, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dada. So I appreciated all the comments and input from all the speakers who've already talked. And there's certainly agreement that we are passing through a transitional age. There is a shift of consciousness on the planet. Many progressive ideas that support our ideology have been emerging. And we can see economic, political, social, environmental crises everywhere with polarization. And as Dr. Batra pointed out, we are on the verge of a transition in the social cycle. So people have spoken about what things that we should do, think about, and I'd like to speak about who will do this. I'd like to start with a short story. About 5 years ago, I started a coalition here in my region of institutions, financial institutions, and NGOs dedicated to equitable economic development. So we sat around for thinking about what we wanted to do, and everyone focused on cooperatives. They really wanted to develop cooperatives. So for about a year or more, we analyzed this, we brought in speakers, et cetera, until one day somebody raised his hand and said, okay, I'm willing to put $2,000 to train a cooperative developer. So this is a new profession here in this country, moved by the cooperative movement that's forming and accelerating here in the United States. There's training programs for cooperative developers. So we sent somebody volunteered in our group. We sent her to a training. They came back, and immediately we started training business startups and how to form cooperatives. We started giving conferences on cooperative development. We started helping retiring businesses turn into cooperatives. She started a whole nother NGO for this purpose, and then we went on and trained 2 more cooperative developers. There's a dearth of leadership everywhere, and people are looking for real leadership, and we need leadership. Since the late 1950s, Sarkar has repeatedly talked about the need for sadvipras to achieve societal transition, to transition us through the social cycle and to establish and maintain a universal society. Sadvipras are embedded in the ideology and are essential for its materialization. With sadvipras in the field, our ideology takes a life of its own, a reality. And so how did these sadvipras emerge? Well, if you talk to people, everyone has certain fantasies and fantastical ideas about where these sadvipras are going to come from. But Sarkar actually spoke about training sadvipras, that there's a training to prepare sadvipras to do what they should be doing. So I'd like to propose a university level program in Gurukul dedicated to this leadership development. They would train people in moral and spiritual development, to help people go deep into their devotion, their sadhana, their disciplines, and their moral consciousness. Extensive study of the theory and application of Prout and neo-humanism. They would have knowledge of social cycle dialectics and Varna psychology. There'd be courses on cultural identity and social integration, public administration, collective leadership, and it would train them in key activist skills like how to mobilize individuals, organizations, and populations to initiate social movements and revolutions. And a lot of this information is already there. Some of it we would have to also develop it. So much of this curriculum would be open to everyone, but those on track to become sadvipras but of course take these courses and other practicums. I think we need to start early to identify candidates, either in high school or earlier, people who are dedicated to spirituality, morality, spirit of service, and intolerance of injustice. We need to maximize diversity by recruiting people from all cultures and geographies, maximum women, people of color, and others from oppressed minorities who already have a revolutionary consciousness. Whether we think we need Sadvipras today or in 15 years, we need to start this program. There are many training programs going on now, planetary leadership, tools to change the world, other trainings, and I think these are really important. But what I'm suggesting here is a multi-year, multi-stage professional development program based on collaboration of Gurukul, Prout, and any other Ananda Marga related organization that wishes to participate. In closing, I'd like to quote Baba in his talk from Future of Civilization. He said, be Sadvipras and make others also Sadvipras. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I think it has, the time has come to close this session too, since we have taken all the time that was allotted to us. And I want to emphasize that, as I mentioned in my original remarks, that, we have two extremes. We have very senior veterans, professors and academicians and scholars who have worked all their life, like Professor Batra, like Dr. Edward McKenna, like Dr. Howard Neiman and others. So similarly, on the other hand, we have a lot of young people who are getting engaged in our master units, in our training programs and leadership programs. So this is the time to really come together so that the knowledge, the lamp can be passed on to the new generation. They are the ones who are going to take the lead. So that's why I took a special effort to make sure that we have some young people here, like Advaita, who is just finishing her PhD at IAM Ahmedabad, and many other young persons like Radhika from China and Lagima from China. I hope that many, Bhakti Devi from Italy, that these people will come forward and own this vision, which is being shared by many of the scholars. So with this, I'd like to close this session, and with many, many thanks to all the speakers who have contributed to this session. Thank you, and back to Mahajyoti.
Thank you, Dada. Thank you for everyone who contributed to session 2. I'd like to remind everyone that you can put your questions to a particular presenter in the chat, and they will be answered following this event. So without, well, moving right ahead, we're going to session 3, and that is entitled Neo-Humanist Education Initiatives. And of course, this session is being facilitated by Didi Ananda Devapriya, who will introduce these speakers. And Didi is the director of the Sunrise Romanian Projects and author of Permaculture for Children. Didi?
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with so many important people in neo-humanist education together and on this conference today. And I want to start now with introducing some participants that have been very active in the practical side of neo-humanism and actually leading projects and working directly with children and others to teach neo-humanism and bring it into the world. So the first one that I would like to introduce is Rutger Taminga, who is based in Taiwan, and he is one of our most prolific and creative writers. He has been producing a stream of beautifully illustrated children's books and teaching manuals. He's developed children's yoga teacher trainings, Yoga Touch for bringing yoga to people with disabilities, Storybugs, which is a neo-humanist English teaching curriculum, and he's working on a peace project called Amazing Kids, and that's just the beginning. So let's turn it over to Rutger Taminga. Is he there?
Yeah, namaskar. Thank you, Didi. Thank you for your beautiful introduction. And also very thankful for all the organizers of this very impressive meeting online. Actually, everybody has been sharing many ideas about neo-humanism. And when we approach the public here, we find that our angle is not so much, I live in Taiwan, I forgot to tell you. And our angle is not so much social change, it is more about mental health. And the way we approach the public with ideas of neo-humanism is actually from the angle of mental health, that the way we operate today is not sustainable, it's not healthy. We were talking about this COVID generation. In one province of China, in the last few months, 100 adolescents jumped from the school buildings because they cannot undergo the stress and they commit suicide. And this is a problem that actually exists all over the world for adolescents. Now, actually, it's very interesting that, you know, many people speak about crisis and the difficulties that are going on in society. I see many positive things. And in psychology, you know, people like Lisa Miller, who's a professor in the States, and the many other great educators, they are bringing forward ideas that we have to bring in spirituality in education in the first 10 years so that children will be more prepared to move into the adolescence and continue in the second 10 years. And so actually our work here is, of course, one aspect, as Didi said, is kids yoga. Yeah, we have that now. We are doing baby yoga, 0 to 3. We have kids yoga, and we divide also in 2 sections. And then now we have adolescence programs. And this is a little bit hard to promote, but kids yoga now, we have trained here over, I think, more than 1,000 people. Active, maybe 200-300. One way or another, our programs affect the society. And so actually I'm quite positive. I don't see change going to come overnight, but I think that what we see is that the people want change, and it's coming from the bottom up. Of course, I live in a very fortunate place because here we don't have much problem with COVID-19. So we are very peaceful here in Taiwan. And so many of our programs still continue. And actually this, Didi mentioned some of the publications I've been working on, and I've been very fortunate actually because I can work with educators who have school institutions, and they give me the opportunity to create education materials, and they apply it in their schools. So we have a program in China, and she has over 1,000 schools, and the program is going on in the schools. She promotes meditation in China in her schools. And so these very practical things. Since February, I've not been able to go to China, so I have much time to write. And so I started my work on the Circle of Love. And this is a set now of 50 stories. And this book it's going to come out end of the year. It will have 50 stories. Every story will have story prop. And then these things will all come online. And this is actually my main point. These are the workbooks for the new Circle of Love, which is basically green curriculum, cosmic education. And we would very much to work together to put these things online so that anybody anywhere in the world actually can access our neo-humanist education ideas. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be with everybody. And I really hope that we can have more of these meetings and share more and connect more, because everybody is doing such wonderful work and we can maybe support each other better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your amazing creativity and productivity, and that you're actually just reaching hundreds and hundreds and maybe thousands of children and parents. And thank you so much. So the next person that we will be listening to is Christian Franceschini, who's been bringing yoga to public schools in the Trentino area of northern Italy and reaching more than 10,000 children over the years. So he also leads trainings for teachers and adults in Tantra Yoga, naturopathy, and he's director of Yogis, which is the Italian National Yoga and Intuitive Sciences Academy. Another super productive person that's really reaching many, many, many children. Can I turn it over to you, Christian Franceschini?
Namaskar, my name is Christian Franceschini, Acharya Kamaleshwar. I'm from Italy, and I'm working full-time with a public school, teaching them yoga and meditation. And I have like every year 100 to 800 children. I'm working also with the Neo-Humanist Research Institute in Verona. We have a team of Margis who are working how to bring Neo-Humanist projects in the public management, in the prisons, and in other projects where education is needed. I'm working also as a director of Yogis, Yoga and Institutional Science. In Italy we have like a 3 years course how to learn philosophy, history, personalities in the history, their teachings regarding yoga and everything that is linked with institutional science like Tantra, aesthetic science, social science also. And yeah, this is the main thing I'm working here in Italy. And we just last year we hosted the Gurukul convention with more than 100 people. So there are like we have more than 25 volunteers working in these projects. And we're now launching a new platform where we have online learning, and we will fill it up with many courses on Neo-Humanism, on Tantra, and social change. So I'm happy that the flow is here, and that I can serve humanity with this project. So I hope you have all a nice online conference. I may have to work tomorrow during the conference. I'm working and teaching in a naturopathic school, so I may be having problems but I give my deep breathing namaskar to everybody, and by His grace our work will continue.
All right, so the next person that was lined up is Linda Vishala Baker, who has been working for years as a school counselor in New Haven, Connecticut for at least 30 years. And she's been on the forefront of developing innovative curriculum approaches that combine Neo-Humanist education, but also something called ECL, which is emotional well-being and creativity learning. She is now also running Supporting Systems, which is an organization that offers workshops, trainings, and consultancy. So I would like to turn it over now to Linda.
Namaskar, everyone. So we have been hearing a lot of amazing ideas and about where we are now, what the future is. But I'd like us to just take a moment to just breathe, everyone. And connect with our hearts. Because really the essence of the teacher, if you think back to your favorite teacher or the teacher that inspired you the most, or your relationship with your guru teacher, it's that relationship of love. It's being seen. That was the thing that really moved you to the next place for your well-being, your creativity, your learning, your inspiration. So the work that I do in Supporting Systems I say Baba put me out on the outer rim for decades, and now he's sort of bringing me back into another place. And out there on the outer rim, there was a lot of teachers in challenging situations with students in challenging situations. And I had to work in that environment for a long time. So I got to think about the inner development of the teacher working in those situations. And of course, one of the very unique and amazing parts of NEO's education is their emphasis on the inner development of the teacher. So helping the teacher to develop that new mystic feeling, that love for, which is another pillar of new mystic education, for other beings and people and animals and inanimate objects, everything. How to do that in those situations. How to develop different ways of knowing, just not thinking, but also feeling, sensing, intuiting. Those things that help us to bring into our classrooms with our children a different way of knowing. So what I found is that, and what I do in supporting systems, is I help teachers to untangle from those cultural things that bring them down and help and stop that flow. And also in their own personal family systems, the challenges that happen there. How can I take what's good from my culture? How can I take the resources from my family? How can I take the love and leave that which sort of tangles me up so that I can be free, open, more giving, more empathetic to my students and see them in their challenges, but also see them and their parents and their family systems in a mutual respect and love. Because when that happens, just like that teacher saw you, you relax, your well-being, your creativity, your learning happens. So I have things that we do with that. I run training programs in circles. We do something called systemic exercises, constellation systemic exercises, art extensions, meditation, stilling, tools for the classroom, all those things. But the most important thing I have found is the teacher being able to be free and joyous and loving and be able to hold their classroom in a way that all the children are included. They all belong. And it's important for them to do that with each other first, I actually found. When they did it with each other first, then they all could do it with their children. And then when things got tough, they also had that relationship with each other. So it's good I have 30 seconds, but I'm just about done. I'm probably going to be the only one who's a little early. And let's take one more breath and remember that in that breath, in our sadhana, in that relationship in front of us, and with our spiritual teacher and taking the love from everyone behind us, in that space is where we're going to find what's next. Namaskar. I'm very grateful and honored to be part of this.
Thank you so much, Vishala. I love the way that you always reconnect us to a sense of larger systems that we're part of and how that can be a source of strength and support. The next person that I will be introducing is Eric Jacobson, who is another of our star neo-humanist education directors and leaders and teacher. Trainer as well. He founded the Progressive School of Long Island in 1985 and it now has more than 135 students, kindergarten through 8th grade. And he has a deep commitment to articulating neo-humanist philosophy and applying it in very innovative ways to curriculum development. So I really look forward now to hearing from him. Eric.
Namaskar. Thank you, Didi. So school starts the day after tomorrow for us, after half a year of being closed. And there's a climate of tremendous fear right now. Fear from the teachers of getting sick and dying, infecting their loved ones. Fear from the children who haven't been in school for 6 months. Fear from parents, and even fear from our COVID deniers that somebody's going to force them, some agency they don't believe in, to do things they don't want to do, such as wear masks. And our response to all of these pressures is that we've taken on the most ambitious project since the school began. We've identified more than 200 courses that we have running at the school. And we're going to be putting all of them up online and completing them by the end of this school year in June. This includes not only courses that are added to a New Humanist school, such as meditation, yoga, moral principles, but how neo-humanism also affects other subjects, such as English instruction, math, history, and especially science. I want to focus for a moment on science. Several people have said during this presentation today that there is a lack of proper scientific understanding, there's a rejection of science, and there's the opposite also, which is a mechanistic, let's say, root in science. So we've identified 6 principles that will be a part of all of our curriculum instruction, which is going up online. And those are reviewing scale, understanding systemic nature, creating perspective, finding connection. For a moment, I could speak about dogma watch. This is the hardest one to identify. I read a sentence the other day in a science textbook that was talking about photosynthesis. Accidentally and unknowingly, the fungus broke down the minerals that were hidden in the rocks so that the plants that followed would be able to do their photosynthesis. I think embedded in all of this is nothing less than a religious belief that the world has no controller, that things happen accidentally, and that that there's no plan, and that plants don't know what they're doing either. So in discussion for many years with philosophers and other educators, we've come up with these principles, which I'm only listing the names, but if people want, they can get more detail on each of these. And so just as an example, when this curriculum is finished, our science instruction will be influenced by New Humanism by applying these principles to everything that is taught from kindergarten to 8th grade. And we've done the same for English. We've done the same for teaching social studies, for teaching math even, and for, of course, all the specialities such as the arts and yoga and things that we do in our New Humanist schools. So that concludes my presentation. I would just say it's lovely to hear from everyone and to see all of you, some of whom I haven't seen in 40 years, and some who, especially my brothers and sisters in Australia, whose inspiration has meant so much to me. Namaskar.
Namaskar, and it's really exciting. You're always a pioneer and pushing New Humanist education into new frontiers. So I'm really interested to see what's going to come from the innovation that you're coming up with facing this crisis of COVID. So our last speaker in this session is Dr. Sunandita Bhaumik, who is has done her PhD on Humanist education. She teaches at the Kuch Bihar Panchanan Parma University in West Bengal in India. She is also an academic counselor of IGNOU, which is the Indira Gandhi National Open University. She published Curriculum Reconstruction for Primary Education in the past, and in the past year, she's been working with Didi Ananda Rama on developing an Ananda Marga pre-primary curriculum for India. So it's a great honor to meet you, and I'll turn it over to you now, Dr. Balnick.
Namaskar. Am I audible to you, Didi? Hello?
Yes?
Are you listening to me? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, okay. So namaskar to all the new humanist educators across the world, and my special thanks to Dada Sambhu Sivananda to giving me this opportunity to meet all the new humanist educators from the world. I will just focus on the factor that many more modern visions and the concepts have been emerging, but new humanist education is different and unique in the sense that it talks about the maximum utilization of human potentialities at all the levels, physical, mental, and spiritual. And NHE emphasizes on practice. It gives a clear guidelines how to achieve the ultimate goal of human life. The modern vision of human is to utilize knowledge for self-actualization. Society necessitates a new human with a new wave of consciousness. Consciousness comes from understanding and realization, which again will come from intentional practice. This is where new humanist education has a crucial role to play. We need to change the way we think, the way we act. New humanist education emphasizes on both action and reflection. And reflection is more important than action. People are using, people are using their knowledge and skills in search of the material pleasure, and other dimensions of the life are not explored. So, new humanist education talks about all the potentialities. What the education system now we see, it is about the very, very narrow understanding about the human life. Our education system is making human as an economic being, utilizing the human intellect only for the economic growth and self-pleasure. So we need to educate the children for both humanity and for human. And so in this regard, the other potentialities that the child has, we should explore, we should utilize. So bringing about perfect balance in the three spheres of individual and collective life. I would like to talk about the PROMA. We should utilize the PROMA, we should apply PROMA in our NHE curriculum. New humanist education curriculum would include the inputs to establish PROMA in three spheres. Each and every child has a tremendous potentialities in physical, psychic, and spiritual sphere. Only due to the lack of opportunity and proper guidelines, these potentialities are not utilized for the establishment of PROMA in individual and collective life. And so this is in case of physical PROMA, we can maintain to teach them how to utilize natural resources for social and economic development. Baba told that economic policy of a culture, of a country should be based on a principle of PROMA. Again, in case of psychic PROMA, human mind is the reservoir of many colorful thoughts. These creative faculties must be expressed fully, and all the faculties must be externalized. There is a saying in Veda that Sa no buddha subhaya sammanaktu. Let my intellect be always attached to the blessedness. So in case of psychic PROMA, P.R. Sharkar told about the maintaining the aesthetic science and supra-aesthetic science. That is Nandan Vigyan and Mohan Vigyan. So psychic PROMA can be maintained through aesthetics and supra-aesthetics. New humanist education is purely wisdom-centered, but without compromising the material world. So that I told that we have a very narrow understanding about the human life. our education system is just making only human as a, the making human for the self-pleasure, to earn the physical pleasure, to earn more and more self-pleasure. So this is not the ultimate goal of human life. And so this, in order to bring the transformation in socioeconomic understanding, the school proud can be introduced, because PROMA and proud are very closely related. And so I would just like to say my own experience that vocal for local, to increase the sensitivity towards local problems, enhancing school community relationship, community survey, analyzing the cause and impact of poverty, identifying the common problems faced by poor families, finding out the solution to eradicate poverty in our locality. These activities will build an empathetic relationship with the community and awaken the feeling of their role in local development. So it results in shifting from individualistic mentality to collectivity. And also I should mention that love and care and proper understanding for the local flora and fauna. So how to bring this understanding, we can incorporate the proud and PROMA in our school, NHS school curriculum. We should establish at least a model school in India that we don't have right now, so that that can play a philanthropic institution that recently Indian government has introduced national education policy, and they have talked about some of the private institutions can play the role of philanthropic institution. So new humanist education, the model new humanist education in India right now can play that to promote the new humanist educational values among the children. So with these few words,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Balnick. It's just so inspiring to know that you are there working within the Indian higher education system, and that bringing these values of wisdom-centered learning and helping teachers to realize the importance of becoming reflective and reflective learners. This is tremendous. This is really inspirational because it can reach so many people that way. So this whole session, I think, has been very inspiring to see how many of you are really sorry, after so many years that Gurukul now has been around, that it's really coming to fruition. I feel there's a lot of fruits that are ripening for humanity now, and a lot of important contributions, innovations, and practical experiences that are reaching already thousands of children, and as these trajectories continue, are going to reach even more and more, especially as we manage to bring these into institutions that train future educators and can share and build on these practical experiences that people like Arun and Rutger Taminga and Christian Franceschini, that unfortunately we didn't get to hear from, but all of those are wonderful resources and practical examples that can be used to bring this more and more into society. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you all the presenters from session 3. That was wonderful. It's nice to hear what's going on around the world. And so now we'll be moving into session 4, which is Spiritual Sciences, Research and Practice. Richard Maxwell is a neuroscientist extraordinaire and clinical psychologist. He will be introducing the session 4 speakers. Richard?
Namaskar. Welcome to session 4. We're going to begin with Dr. Ram Nath Jha, who is a professor at the School of Sanskrit and Indic Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. He has been highly productive in his teaching and research, focusing on Vedic studies, Indian culture, comparative philosophy, Indian philosophy, including Vedanta, Sankhya, yoga and Navya Nyaya, and on the philosophy of sciences. We're pleased to have Dr. Jha begin our presentations. Is he with us?
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Namaskar to everyone, and namaskar to Swamiji for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I am very fond of Ananda Sutram. Ananda Sutram of Guru Sri Ananda Murti Ji. We all know that when he writes Ananda Sutram, writes with the name with Ananda Murti, but when he writes on Microvita, then with the name of Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar. So again, he is indicating the two aspects of understanding. As we know, the nomenclature of this text is Ananda Sutram. This text is written in Sanskrit because in Indian tradition, mostly all foundational texts have been written in Sanskrit because that is supposed to be the most scientific language. So the whole text is written in Sanskrit and in aphoristic style. First three chapters are actually philosophical foundations. Fourth chapter is for sadhana and fifth one is for application. As per my understanding, everyone should know the first three chapters of this Ananda Sutram because actually that prompts us to apply it in our day-to-day behavior. In the second chapter, Baba says that the goal of each one of us is happiness. So we do everything for happiness. But what type of happiness? He says there are two layers of happiness. One is based on the very fragmented layers of understanding, and the second one is the understanding of the highest truth. The fragmented layer of understanding actually causes the very fragmented layer of happiness. In Upanishads too, Rishi says that Yadalpam tan martyam, I am just quoting original Sanskrit. Yadalpam tan martyam, if you have very limited way of understanding or layer of understanding, then you have very limited aspect of happiness. If your understanding is all pervasive, your happiness is too all pervasive. So Baba always says that Sukham Anantam Anandam. So if you want to have highest bliss, highest state of happiness, then you must understand or realize the essence of the truth, essence of the individual, essence of the whole cosmic, and that is Brahma. That is Brahma. So in a aphorism, Brihadeshana pranidhanam cha dharma. What should we do? What is our dharma? Dharma is not for a fragmented kind of understanding. Our dharma is to realize ultimate truth. And that truth is unifying and interconnecting. That truth is all pervasive. That truth is immanent. So without realizing that truth, no one can be happy forever. So I think that should be followed, and that dharma should be based on yoga. Lastly, I am quoting Sutra, Ota Prota Yogabhyam Sanjukta Purushottamaha. So we have to connect with that essence, that universal truth. And to connect to every one of this globe, of this universe, is Ot Yog, and to the whole cosmos is Prot Yog. So the ultimate truth is connected to each one of us and also connected to the whole cosmos. That connecting and underlying reality is known as Brahma. That has been stated in the first aphorism, Shiv Sakyatmakam Brahma. So I think that kind of yoga can lead us to the ultimate state of happiness, and that is the message of Guruji. So I think we should transcend materialistic understanding or achievement, and we have to enjoy materialistic but with the background of that ultimate consciousness or the realization of ultimate consciousness, and that can be possible only through yoga. I think this is the message of Baba. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and only with this understanding we can construct a global constitution, and we can connect oneself to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jha. It's fascinating that with the vast amount of information that you work with, that you should focus on Ananda Sutram. I think that says much about just how much wisdom is concentrated there. Next, we have Dr. Suchari Katyal, who is a cognitive neuroscientist. His research includes studying the human mind and brain on various topics ranging from perception to changes arising from meditation training. He was awarded the 2019 Seal of Excellence Award by the European Commission for his recent project on the role of brain oscillations in meditation. We welcome Dr. Katyal to make the next presentation.
Namaskar. All right, since I don't have so much time, I'll just jump right into it, and let me share my presentation. So, after much deliberation, I actually ended up deciding that this will be my presentation, which is a cognitive science approach to microvita research in the mind. So, can you everyone see the presentation? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, as we know that there are three types of microvita. Microvita can be broadly divided into three categories. This is from the Discourse on Mysterious Emanation of Cosmic Factor. First, those coming within the scope of microscope. Second, those not coming within the scope of microscope, but coming within the scope of perception as a result of their expression. And third, those not coming within the scope of common perception, but coming within the scope of a special type of perception, which is actually the reflection of conception within the periphery of perception. So now these second and third are actually very, very deep statement that as a cognitive scientist that I've been able to reflect on a little bit, and they cannot be understood without studying the mind. So effectively, we cannot have a science of microvita without really properly understanding its effect on the mind. So here's another just a little bit quote. For investigating the initial stage of matter, research is not possible in physical laboratories. It is possible solely in the human mind and soul. Okay, for some reason, yeah. Okay, so how to proceed with microvita research in the mind? So I would suggest that there is a large volume of work that has been done in the past century and a half to study the mind in psychology, phenomenology, and cognitive science. These areas, and by Baba's grace, I have some experience in these areas, and so I think it's a good place to start connecting the dots of the science that has already been done with our little bit understanding of microvita. So I suggest that based on what we already know, I think it is very important to actually first break down what we have of course, through what Baba's writings, but also through the research that has been already been conducted by the various microvita researchers. It is very important to break down the writings into a logical series of questions and sub-questions that are in need of scientific addressing. Because without actually having questions, we cannot have science. So you can conceive of them, think of this as different PhD theses that need to be conducted within microvita research. So, and by having these series of questions and sub-questions, we can also have an organized way to work in coordinated cooperation, yet independence from each other. And it will allow interdisciplinary collaboration for microvita research. So I'm just defining a couple of basic questions here. So one is, which is actually coming right from the writings about microvita. What is the difference and relationship between conception and perception? And the second one is, if we consider a particular microvita, and if we want to detect it in a mental laboratory, how can we say that that microvita has been detected by someone in their mental laboratory? So this is, I'll come to this in a second, how to tackle this in a scientific way. So perception and conception, I'm just going to read this one little bit of a couple of lines. Now, the entity or entities coming within the conception of mind are pure abstract, and those coming within perceptions or feelings of the sensory or motor organs are matter, pure matter. Subtle microvita also do not come within the range of perception, but they come within the range of conception. So again, these are very kind of actually deep truths to a cognitive scientist, because it's amazing that now we are really coming in cognitive science to these understanding that actually, yes, perception is basically occurring, and actually even feeling is only occurring at the level of sensation. I don't have time to go into that right now. All right, so
we'll bring it to a close at this point.
oh, we are almost there. Is it time? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I guess I'll have more time to elaborate on this later. I have a little model of this idea that how we can actually proceed along these developing these questions. So we can go into this more later.
Thank you very much, Dr. Katyal. This seems like a very fascinating new advance in how to approach the very complex topic of microvita. And next we have Dr. Joshna Latrobe, who completed her doctorate this year at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. She is the first to document the Rari Kirtan music tradition and is also a prolific composer of kirtans herself, and has produced many albums of original and ethnographic material. We are honored by Dr. Latrobe's participation and presentation today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Dada Shambhu-Shivananda, for inviting me. I found everybody's talk absolutely fascinating and interesting, and I'm really glad I have the opportunity to talk today, because so far there hasn't been much said about music or Prabhat Sangeet Kirtan, so I'm very grateful to be able to talk about that. I'm just going to get my PowerPoint presentation. Can we get that up? Good. Yes. So, particular, my work in music has been particularly on Rari Kirtan. My PhD was completed in 2010, and since then I have been giving workshops and teaching that, as well as writing my own music. So I wanted to look at, as we all know, during COVID, there's been a huge rise in Kirtan, which has been online, public Kirtan, mainly on Facebook, and other online sites such as Online Kirtan for the Universe, Australian Kirtan for Connection, Rawa programs initiated by Rajita Krishna from Argentina, Planetary Kirtan. We hear of all these things and so on, so many others. Kirtan, we've all been inspired by these online Kirtan programs. So Baba talks about Kirtan as Kirtan having many benefits, which we're mostly aware of those. And my belief is that there's Kirtan not only, we do Kirtan a lot, of course Kirtan is a very important aspect of our spiritual practice, but it's not usually focused on as a music genre in itself. And it's my opinion that Kirtan actually needs to be taught, encouraged and taught in neo-humanist schools, not only sung. My research, as I said, goes deeply into Rara Kirtan, or actually scratches the surface because it's an incredibly deep subject. Why Ra Kirtan? Well, Baba talks about in his book on Ra, he says that to the tunes of Ra and in the speech of Ra and with the words of Ra I shall sing Kirtan. He also goes on to say that the Kirtan of Ra is not merely Samgit, that is song, dance and instrumental music. It sways the finite humankind, maybe that should be human mind, with the vibration of the unlimited and infinite. Hence, it is outstanding and unparalleled. And certainly, that was my experience of first seeing Rari Kirtan back in 2000. It was such a powerful, super ascetic experience for me that it led me to do my PhD on the subject, because I really wanted to understand the deep mechanics of Kirtan, how it could take people so incredibly high. Of course, we experience this bliss in our own Ananda Marga Kirtan, but experiencing Rari Kirtan was for me a completely different level. So I went deeply into Rari Kirtan. And so that's one aspect of my research. The other aspect is basically looking at my own observations, my own experiences in Ananda Marga Kirtan. And my thought is that we really need to improve upon and develop our own Kirtan in Ananda Marga, in our schools and elsewhere. And one way that we can do that is to remember that Kirtan is also a very rich literary tradition. Most people aren't aware of that, but Kirtan is a rich literary tradition with songs and poems which date back to at least 1100, if not further back than that, with Jayadeva's, like Jayadeva's Kirtans, for example. So I just wanted to go on. For example, my research was involved with actually analysing the Rari Kirtan to see how it's actually structured, and that's a very important part of understanding the mechanics of Kirtan and how it can give us that experience, that super ascetic experience. And I hope in future we'll be able to actually implement this in our own Kirtan. And of course there's the ascetics in Kirtan, and Baba talks about that, the ascetics being nothing but within that the pleasure that we derive from our Kirtan, and how that sort of inverts and we become basically the pleasure of Pramprusha, we become his pleasure. So with that in mind, I brought about the Kirtan Academy. So the goals of the aim of Kirtan Academy is to bring together, thank you, Kirtanias from all around the world to provide resources, to provide seminars for further education in Kirtan. So these are some of the subjects that we cover in that Kirtan course, and we also have monthly sessions. If you're interested, please just email me. My email address is there below. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Latrobe. I think it's very special to have a strong intellect applied to analyzing such an important spiritual practice as Kirtan, and I'm sure we all look forward to seeing more of what you accomplish. We are going to conclude with Dada Vishwarupananda, who has been an Ananda Marga Acharya since 1982. He is based in Washington, D.C., coordinating development projects, teaching yoga-related subjects at local universities, and conducting yoga courses throughout the world, including courses for the well-being of Amrit beneficiaries. He has visited over 60 countries and considers himself a global emissary of spirituality. It is fitting that we conclude our session with Dada Vishwarupananda who is a pillar of the practice of social service in local and global communities. Welcome, Don.
Thank you very much. Namaskar, everybody. Excuse me. Well, it's wonderful to be sharing this cyberspace with so many wonderful people around the world. So welcome, everybody. Actually, what I'd like to say is inspiration I've drawn from a previous presenter, Sucharit. He gave a presentation last year at the Gurukul Conference in Italy on phenomenology. So it really got me thinking, about my experience of meditation and how far my meditation was a representation or was actually an experience. So by representation, I mean, well, let's say you ask somebody, how are you feeling today? And the person says, well, I'm fine, right? So the I'm fine is a representation of how they're feeling. It's not really the experience of how they're feeling, which is being presented. Or if you look at the societal level, politicians often try to give us a representation of reality, but our own experience of reality is very different. So I was thinking how important it is, to kind of take back one's right, if you will, to experience one's own experiences as being valid. So I was putting that then into the meditative context. And I'd like to just talk about three aspects of this, how in my own meditation I've been able to sweeten the experience of the practice. So one is mutual touching. Sucharit's professor in France, Petit Mongin, she speaks about this, that we're in relationship. This is a relative world, and so we're in relationship with everything all the time. We are in relationship with ourselves right now. So hopefully there's been a sort of a mutual touching that we've inspired each other in some way. But even when it comes to, say, being in a relationship with a tree, there's still a mutual touching that I reach out to the tree and in some way the tree reaches back out to me. We meet together in some way. And in that relationship, there's much more respect for the other. So in meditation, one can even have this mutual touching with a mantra. So a mantra is not just a two-syllable sound, say, but the mantra is a type of energetic presence that is empowered by the guru that lives in the psyche. And so in meditation, one can have this very empowering relationship that I gaze upon the mantra, but the mantra is also coming to gaze upon me, to guide me in some way. And so in this mutual relationship, I found there's a lot more potency, a lot more presence, a lot more power. And then the second point about this phenomenology of meditation is sacred spaces. So our previous speaker, Dr. Ramnath, spoke about Ota Yoga and Prota Yoga. So Prota Yoga is that relationship that the Supreme Consciousness has with all beings. So when I'm in relationship with my mantra or with the tree or with the other human being or with everybody here, that relationship is within the all-pervasive consciousness of the Supreme. And so then by definition, there should be some magic, there's some beauty within that relationship. So the mutual touching leads, if you will, to a sense of sacredness, that this is something special because it's within the gaze of the Supreme. And the final principle that I've been exploring in the phenomenology of meditation is turning towards, you could also call it reversibility, in that when we are young, like according to Piaget, between the age of 7 and 10, we develop the ability to think backwards, if you will. So we can count 1 to 10 and we can count 10 to 1. So we human beings have this ability to reverse perspectives. So reversibility then in the context of meditation or spirituality is turning towards soul or Atman and understanding that the Atman is but an expression of the Supreme Atman. And then in one's day-to-day life, even if one is eating a banana, one still has this feeling of reversibility in that I understand that the Supreme Consciousness through my Atman, through my mind, is actually enabling me to eat the banana. So it's a type of module video or second lesson that we do in the Ananda Marga practice. So I'd like to thank Sucharit for enabling me to do my own personal research. And I thank everybody because my time is out, and so best wishes. And namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you very much, Dada. That was a very fitting conclusion. As we bring this to a close, I think it's very important to question the role of our intellects, and when our intellects are directed not outwards, but inwards, as you're suggesting, that's what provides the real value of any intellectual process. And it may not be the end step in a spiritual process, but it can provide a very important level of inspiration, and hopefully we've accomplished that a bit today. Thank you, and on to the conclusion.
Thank you, Richard, and all the speakers who are with us for session 4, which was an enlightening session. And so I want to remind everyone that you can put questions into the chat directed to particular speakers, and they will be answered after this event, and the questions and answers sent to everyone. So as we're winding down this session of Gurukul, now we will have a few words from the Gurukul board members, some of the board members, and we'll start with Kalyani Chu.
Namaskar, sorry. Yes, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So we have been treated to an incredible feast of presentations from so many distinguished people, academics and others from all over the world across such a wide range of subjects. And I think many of us are really looking forward to following up on this. So my announcement is that, as has been referred to, we will have a 3-day conference in December over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, December 11, 12, and 13, where we can elaborate more on the presentations that have been made tonight or today, and others who want to present and share their ideas and their work are also invited to please contact us so that we can arrange for the opportunity. It will be over the first 2 days on the 11th and the 12th. People will be giving their presentations in workshops or panels, and where maybe we will have 1 hour or 1.5 or 2 hour sessions for each person or each topic. There will be the presentations and then a question and answer session. And then on the 3rd day, it will be, everybody will be getting together, and you know, we haven't quite formulated the structure of the event yet, but you know, we welcome your ideas and please contact us. We hope that these wonderful ideas that we have been, you know, fortunate enough to share tonight can be elaborated on, can be, you know, moved downstream into implementation, and just, you know, developed in the various ways, because what we want to do is to bring Baba's ideas, magnificent ideas, into the mainstream of the world and into the real world in implementation. So once again, the session will be on December 11, 12, and 13. And please send if you want to participate, please send us an email at conference@gurukul.edu. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Kalyani. And then we'll have a few words from Dr. Sid Jordan.
Namaskar. So in an effort to bring these ideas that have been shared today to the world at large, we're working on developing a neo-humanist college. That neo-humanist college will have its first hub at the Neo-Humanist College of Asheville. But the idea is to extend these hubs to Europe and Sweden, Italy, Singapore, Taiwan, and other places. But the idea is to create a university without walls. This university without walls would be a hybrid that combines distance learning and mentoring. And we are going to be depending on the faculty that has been presenting here today and others besides the people who were able to attend today. This global faculty will be called upon to create a curriculum and courses of an interdisciplinary nature. We have been creating some courses thus far on how to develop the skills of online learning. And this has been recorded and will be made available to all instructors interested in making a contribution to the Neo-Humanist College. So we hope to be in touch with all of you in preparation for the December event and to begin to develop these courses. The first set of courses are being developed for our teachers in the many schools, both elementary, high school, and colleges around the world. But we're going to look towards this august group of people who've been here today to help us develop the curriculum and to provide courses for the Neo-Humanist College. You can go online and see the Neo-Humanist College website being developed. And we look forward to having the participation of all of you in this interdisciplinary effort to bring Baba's ideas of neo-humanism and Prout and many other issues to the world at large. Thank you for your attendance today. Namaskar.
Thank you, Vishwamitra. And so no Gurukul conference would be complete without a few words from R.T. Brim.
Namaskar. I just want to say another venue that we have for all of you to share your incredible ideas and projects is Gurukul Network. And so I invite you all to send your news and photos and articles for this upcoming issue. Articles can be up to 2,000 words, and the deadline for this next issue is October 1st. So I hope some of you will send us some material. You can send email to amgk.glo@gurukul.edu. And I also want to invite all of you to become a member of GANE. GANE is our Global Association of New Humanist Educators. Some of you are already members, but it would be wonderful to have everybody join that. You will be listed in our directory. We have two directories. One is for our institutions, which is public and visible to anybody that goes to our site. And then the directory of individuals of all our academics and directors, et cetera, is private for members. And you can communicate with each other. So please go to gane-educators.org to join. The link is also on the profile page that you received. And one last thing is we welcome your input into how, Gurukul, the office here, can better serve your needs. If you have ideas for things we can do differently or better, please don't hesitate to share them. Okay, thank you. Namaskar.
So I want to thank everybody for attending this Gurukul 30th Anniversary Online Meet. And now we've gone full circle with this event, and it will be closed with some closing remarks from Dada Shambhu-Shivananda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahajyoti, for conducting this 3-hour session. It went like it was just, it just started and it is almost finished. So thank you very much for very smoothly bringing us to this point. I want to mention that actually one thing which I've already mentioned, that this session has been just a teaser for the big conference which we want to do, where we hope to have participation of hundreds of people. It will be open to everybody, and that will take place December 11th, 12th, and 13th. So if you have any ideas, please don't sit back and just send it to the conference@gurukul.edu. And if you want to be part of the organizing, also that's also possible. Currently, Didi Madhupurna and Ananda Madhupurna and Kalyani, they are coordinating it. But if there are more people, the better. Another important aspect of this conference is that we want to encourage collaborations among scholars, who are separated by physical spaces or by disciplines, and they can contribute to one another's work and to support it. So this is very important because, new humanistic ideas, they are very interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. They are, everything is connected with everything else. So Baba told that we should not just pick up old books and just copy them, cut and paste, and that won't become the syllabus for Gurukul. The Gurukul syllabus has to emerge from the wisdom and the experience of all of you and of so many people who have been engaged in this work for decades. So we invite all of you to participate very actively in building the New Humanist College or in building the university township. Here at Anand Nagar, I was completely dumbfounded when I went through all the Simananji's notes, and I discovered that only in the last 3 years, from 1987 to 1990, Baba actually revealed the entire planning for Anand Nagar, in which he had given more than 80 sanctuaries in this Anand Nagar. And so much thoughts he gave to flora and fauna. He gave 223 agriculture research centers at Anand Nagar. So his vision for Anand Nagar was completely different from what the way different cities are built. And Gurukul, as being the hub of this Anand Nagar and being the headquarters of Gurukul being at Anand Nagar, I just began to realize its significance and importance. So I invite all the scholars to come forward and to support all our initiatives. We will be celebrating the centennial, 2021, 2022. Some people say Baba was born actually in 1922, so we still have 2 years to, to close this, to bring him to the limelight in the whole world and his ideas. There were many people who could not participate due to the time limitations. Dr. Dhanju Gista was very keen to share his thoughts, and Dr. Richard Gauthier, it was 4 a.m. in the morning for him. He could not really participate, but many of them, they wanted to share, and I hope that in the future December events, they'll be also able to join. And there are many more people who we were not able to reach and who due to their circumstances could not connect today. So please spread the word around. We want everybody to come together on this broad umbrella of New Humanism, New Humanist agenda, and to bring the message of Baba to the entire world. The world needs it. The flora and fauna need it. Anand Nagar needs it. The organization needs it. Let us go beyond all our limitations and join together and create, a new space in the world where people can feel that, yes, these are the people who have the solution for the world. That's why we have titled the December event as Solutions for a Better World, Solutions for a New World. So please, so once again, I want to thank you all for taking the trouble to be with us. More than, about 80 people were there all along, for 3 hours. It's really, commendable. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the speakers, Dr. Ravi Batra and Dr. Edward McKenna, who we had not heard for a long time, and Hiranmaya and Craig Runde, who came for the first time and talked about World Constitution, and many of our New Humanist educators. Of course, we see them often in the New Humanist education conferences, but Shravan and and we could not hear Richard Maxwell. He has been doing some wonderful research work. So I hope that we'll be able to hear from everybody in December. And thank you very much to Dr. Manohar. It is so hard to bring the work which you people are doing, in 4 minutes. It is really injustice to ask you to collapse everything that you know within 3 to 4 minutes. But you have done a wonderful job. And I just want to I don't have words to thank you enough. And so with all these words, I want to bring this session to a close. And I want to say, Amra Gode Nobo Gurukul. Amra Gode Nobo Gurukul. জ্ঞানের আলোকে রাঙিয়ে দেবো প্রতিটি কুড়ি ফুল গড়ে নেব গুরুকুল আমরা গড়ে নেব গুরুকুল কেহ না থাকিবে দূরে বাজাবো প্রীতিটি তারে বাঁধিব প্রীতির ডোরে মনি হারে অতুল গড়ে নেব গুরুকুল আমরা গড়ে নেব গুরুকুল কেহ না থাকিবে পিছে কেহ না কারেও নিচে কেহ না থাকিবে পিছে কেহ না থাকি ঠেলি না কারেও নিচে সবে আত্মীয় বিরাজে মনে মাঝে দোদুল গড়ে নেব গুরুকুল আমরা গড়ে নেব গুরুকুল Thank you to everyone and namaskar and good night.